there's a giant jar sitting in a hole in Limgrave, stuck in the mud and asking for help. His voice is warm, cheerful, almost comically optimistic. He dreams of becoming a great warrior, of testing himself in legendary battles, of proving that even a pot stuffed with the remains of dead warriors can become a hero. His name is Iron Fist Alexander, and he is one of the kindest, most earnest characters you'll ever meet in the lands between. And his story will break your heart. This is not a tale of villainy or betrayal. This is a story about a hero who did everything right, who fought with honor, who never gave up on his dream, and who still wasn't enough. This is the story of Alexander the Warrior Jar, a character who represents the purest form of determination in Elden Ring. Tonight, I'm going to tell you Alexander's complete story. So settle in, and let's walk through the journey of a Jar who only wanted to be a warrior. It's a story that will make you smile, and then make you weep. Let's begin. Part 1. The Living Jars of the Lands. The living jars are among the most macabre yet fascinating artificial constructs in the lands between, serving a purpose that is both functional and spiritual. In the eyes of the Golden Order, these jars are essentially mobile tombs, designed to collect the physical remains of fallen warriors on the battlefield. Their primary function is a biological logistics operation. They gather the meat and bone of the brave, so that these remains can be transported and eventually returned to the roots of the Erd Tree. This process ensures that the essence of the fallen is recycled into the cycle of rebirth, making the jars a vital, if grotesque, part of the world's natural order. Technically, a living jar is a vessel of clay given a semblance of life through the sheer volume of organic material stored within it. They are not born in the traditional sense. They are crafted and then filled. The consciousness of a jar is typically a collective echo of the warriors it contains, leading most jars to be mindless drones focused solely on their directive. They wander the landscape as scavengers of the dead, silent sentinels of a recycling program that values the flesh over the individual. To most observers, they are merely tools of the Erd Tree, as disposable as the clay from which they are fired. Alexander, however, represents a profound mechanical anomaly in this system. Unlike his mindless kin, he developed a singular, dominant consciousness that refused to be a mere delivery vessel for the Erd Tree. While he recognizes his biological duty to house the dead, he has superimposed a human-like ambition over his programmed utility. He does not see himself as a coffin on legs. He sees himself as a warrior in training. This internal awakening is the spark that sets him apart from the thousands of other jars scattered across the continent, transforming a utility into a destiny. The construction of these jars reveals a culture that views the body as a resource. The clay is reinforced with decorative iron lids and sturdy bases, meant to withstand the rigors of travel across treacherous terrain. Inside, the filling is a soup of heroic history, a literal compression of the lands between's martial past. Most jars are content with this burden, existing only to be emptied and refilled at the base of a minor Erd Tree. They represent the ultimate triumph of the Golden Order's bureaucracy over the finality of death. Alexander's refusal to remain a passive participant in this cycle is an act of quiet rebellion. By seeking to become a great warrior, he is asserting that a construct made of mud can have a soul that belongs to itself rather than the tree. He treats his physical form not as a temporary crate, but as an athlete's body that must be tempered, strengthened, and tested. This shift in perspective is what drives him to leave the traditional paths of the jar kind and seek out the most dangerous regions of the world. In summary, The living jars are the silent workers of a dying world, tasked with a grim but holy labor. They are the intersection of artifice and ancestry, carrying the weight of the fallen in a literal sense. Alexander's journey begins with the realization that he can be more than his contents. He is a vessel that has decided to choose its own destination, a mobile tomb that has decided to start living before it is finally broken. Hidden beneath a secluded cliff in the lush region of Liurnia lies Jarberg, a rare sanctuary of tranquility in a world defined by violence. This village is populated by living jars that have collectively chosen a path of peace over the traditional warrior scavenging directive of their species. Here, the jars do not seek out the remains of the dead. Instead, they spend their days tending to rare flowers and basking in the quiet dampness of the lakeside. It is a community of pacifists, existing in a fragile bubble of innocence that seems entirely out of place amidst the chaos of the shattering. The atmosphere of Jarburg is a stark contrast to the rest of the lands between. While the outside world is obsessed with great runes and the Elden throne, the potentates and jars of this village are concerned with the health of Miquella's lilies and poison blooms. The jars here are gentle, moving with a cautious grace to avoid crushing the delicate flora that defines their home. They represent a version of Jarkind that has embraced being over doing, finding fulfillment in the simple maintenance of beauty rather than the pursuit of martial glory. Alexander is the glaring outlier of this peaceful lineage. While he likely shares the same origin as the residents of Jarberg, he possesses an innate heat that the others lack. To Alexander, the quiet life of a gardener is a form of stagnation. While his kin find purpose in the soft soil and the rain, he finds it in the blood of the battlefield and the fire of the forge. He is the member of the family who could not stay home, driven by an ambition that feels entirely alien to the pastoral lifestyle of his relatives. The existence of Jarberg proves that the living jars are capable of a wide range of emotional and social behaviors. They are not just mindless automatons. They can form attachments to places and to each other. The village is a testament to the idea that even a construct designed for war can choose a life of harmony. However, this peace is maintained only through isolation. The jars of Jarburg survive because the rest of the world has forgotten they exist, a luxury that Alexander is unwilling to accept for himself. Jarburg serves as a foil to Alexander's entire character arc. Every time we encounter him in a dangerous volcano or a frozen wasteland, we are reminded of the peaceful life he rejected. His journey is framed by the knowledge that he could have stayed in the flowers, safe and unnoticed. By choosing the path of the warrior, he is purposefully walking away from the only place where a jar can live without the threat of being shattered. He chooses the cracks of combat over the wholeness of the village. Jarberg is the heart Alexander left behind. It represents the clay in its most natural, untempered state. As Alexander travels further from Liurnia, the memory of Jarberg serves as a baseline for his transformation. He is the jar that chose the fire, leaving the cool shade of the cliffs to find out if a vessel made for peace could ever truly endure the rigors of a legend. Our first introduction to Iron Fist. Alexander is as iconic as it is absurd. He is found waist-deep in a hole in the grassy fields of northern Limgrave. This meeting establishes the core irony of his character. He is a man of massive cosmic ambition who is frequently hindered by his own physical limitations. He is literally stuck in the earth, unable to move forward without the assistance of a passing traveler. It is a comedic moment that humanizes a creature made of iron and clay. grounding his high-minded talk of warriorhood in the reality of his clumsy, rotund form. Despite his predicament, Alexander's spirit is undiminished. He greets the Tarnished with a booming, theatrical voice, introducing himself with a pride that borders on the delusional. He does not sound like a trapped victim. He sounds like a hero who has met a minor inconvenience. This initial dialogue sets the tone for his entire journey. He possesses an unbreakable optimism that allows him to view every failure as a learning experience and every hole as a training exercise. He is a character who refuses to be embarrassed by his own nature. The symbolism of Alexander being stuck in the ground is profound. It represents the weight of his heritage and the physical constraints of being a living jar. He wants to fly to the heights of heroism, but he is fundamentally a heavy earthen object prone to sinking into the mud. His stuckness is a metaphor for the state of all jars before they find a purpose. They are rooted in their utility, unable to move beyond the soil from which they were made. It takes an external force to jar him loose from his starting point. Alexander's request for a great wallop to free him is our first glimpse into his belief in the necessity of impact. He does not ask for a gentle pull or a sophisticated tool. He asks to be hit as hard as possible. This reveals his fundamental understanding of his own body. He is a thing that must be struck to be moved. He embraces the violence of the act because he knows it is the only way to achieve liberation. To Alexander, pain is just another form of momentum, a philosophy that will guide him to the very end of the world. This meeting also establishes the unique bond between Alexander and the Tarnished. He views the player not as a master or a servant, but as a co-conspirator in the pursuit of greatness. By helping him out of the hole, the Tarnished becomes the first person to validate Alexander's ambition. You are the one who proves that he doesn't have to stay where he was planted. From this moment on, Alexander sees the player as a benchmark of what a true warrior looks like, beginning a long-distance rivalry based on mutual respect. The first meeting in Limgrave is a masterclass in character introduction. It gives us a hero who is both a joke and a legend, a creature of mud who speaks with the tongue of a king. Alexander is stuck, but his mind is already miles away on the battlefields of the future. He is a warrior jar who is currently at the mercy of the terrain, but he is already preparing the speech he will give when he finally stands among the gods. When the Tarnished delivers the requested great wallop and sends Alexander flying out of his hole, it marks the symbolic start of his true evolution. This moment of liberation is more than just a physical rescue. It is the point where Alexander realizes that his journey cannot be a solitary one. He understands that to move forward, he needs the impact and influence of others. The act of being freed by a fellow warrior provides him with the psychological momentum he needs to commit fully to his pilgrimage toward the east and the legendary battles that await him. This liberation initiates a pattern of assisted growth that defines Alexander's path. He is a character who is constantly getting stuck, physically, mentally, and metaphorically, and it is his interactions with the world that force him to adapt. He does not resent his need for help. He celebrates it as a form of tempering. After being freed in Limgrave, his dialogue reveals a renewed sense of purpose. He is no longer just a jar wandering the woods. He is a traveler on a mission, emboldened by the fact that he was worthy of being helped by a champion. The physical act of being struck also highlights the resilience of his clay. He survives the wallop without shattering, which gives him a false sense of security about his own durability. He believes that because he survived the Tarnished strike, and he can survive anything the world throws at him. This unshakable confidence is both his greatest strength and his eventual undoing. He begins to equate impact with progress, seeking out increasingly violent encounters to prove that his shell is strong enough to contain his growing ambition. Alexander's refusal to stay stuck is his defining trait in a world where almost every other inhabitant has given up. The Lands Between is filled with NPCs who have accepted their fate, staying in their corners of the map until they rot or go mad. Alexander is the only one who is constantly moving, constantly trying to get to the next stage of his development. He is the antithesis of the stagnation that the Golden Order represents. By literally pulling himself out of the earth, he is declaring that his fate is not determined by where he was born or what he was made of. Furthermore, this event establishes the physics of his character. Alexander is a creature of kinetic energy. He needs to be in motion to feel alive. When he is stationary, he feels the weight of the dead warriors inside him pressing against his walls. When he is moving, he feels like he is leading them toward glory. The wallop was the spark that ignited his engine. From Limgrave onward, he is a force of nature, rolling toward the horizon with a singular focus that even the most powerful enemies will struggle to break. Ultimately, the freeing of Alexander is the moment the warrior Jar is truly born. Before this, he was just a container with a dream. Now, he is a participant in the history of the Lands Between. He thanks the Tarnished with a gift and a promise of future meetings, setting the stage for a series of encounters that will span the entire continent. He has refused to stay stuck in the mud of Limgrave, and in doing so, he has invited the world to try and break him. Alexander's decision to travel to the blighted wilds of Caelid for the Radahn Festival is the first major proof of his seriousness as a warrior. While most sane beings avoid Caelid due to the creeping scarlet rot and the monstrous wildlife, Alexander views the region as a networking event for the elite souls of the age. He isn't drawn to the festival out of a death wish. He is drawn to it because it is the only place where the greatest fighters of the world are gathering for a singular purpose. To him, the chance to fight a star scourge is the ultimate professional opportunity. The call of the festival is something Alexander feels in his very clay. He recognizes that to be a great warrior, one must be present where the great wars are happening. He speaks of the festival with a celebratory tone, as if he were heading to a tournament of champions, rather than a desperate attempt to put down a rotting demigod. This perspective reveals his unique worldview. He does not see the tragedy of Radahn's madness, only the magnificence of his power. Alexander wants to be in the presence of that power, to see it, and eventually to house a piece of it. His journey to Caelid is a massive logistical undertaking for a Jar. He must roll through the rot-infested swamps and avoid the massive predatory dogs and crows that roam the wastes. The fact that he makes it to Redmane Castle at all is a testament to his durability and his sheer force of will. He arrives at the festival grounds not as a curiosity, but as a legitimate participant, standing alongside the likes of Bled the Half-Wolf and the great horned Tragoth. For Alexander, just being invited to the same space as these legends is a victory in itself. The Radahn Festival represents the upper tier of Alexander's ambition. He is no longer fighting hollowed soldiers in Limgrave. He is stepping onto the stage of the demigods. This move signifies his transition from a scavenger to a combatant. He isn't just there to collect the remains after the battle. He intends to be the one who creates them. He wants his own impact to be part of the reason Radahn finally falls. He is seeking a validation that can only be found in the most extreme circumstances the world has to offer. Analytically, Alexander's presence at the festival provides a much-needed sense of levity and purity to the grim proceedings. While the other champions are there for duty, honor, or mercy, Alexander is there for growth. He is the only one who seems genuinely excited to be there. His enthusiasm is a reminder of the dream that started his journey. He believes that if he can survive a clash with the Star Scourge, he will have officially leveled up from a jar of clay to a vessel of legend. In conclusion, the call to the Radahn Festival is the moment Alexander commits to the major leagues of the lands between. He has left the safety of the starting zones to enter the most hostile environment on the map. He is standing at the edge of the world, looking out at the wailing dunes of Caelid, and he is smiling. He is ready to see if his iron fist can make a dent in the greatest champion of the Golden Order. To understand Alexander's obsession with strength, one must understand the biological and spiritual mechanics of a living jar's filling. A jar's power is not inherent to the clay. It is derived from the quality and quantity of the warrior remains stored inside. Alexander believes that by consuming the flesh of champions, he is literally inheriting their courage, their muscle memory, and their combat techniques. He sees himself as a composite hero, a vessel that becomes the sum of the legends it contains. This makes his pursuit of strength a literal process of accumulation. This inheritance of the dead is what gives Alexander his confidence. He doesn't just feel like one warrior, he feels like dozens. When he strikes a foe, he believes the strength of 100 fallen knights is behind his fist. This creates a unique psychological state where his self is a collective. He speaks with a booming authority because he is the voice of a legion. However, this also means that his worth is tied to his contents. If he contains weak remains, he feels fragile. If he contains legends, he feels invincible. The process of being filled is a holy ritual for Alexander, though it appears gruesome to outsiders. He is not just eating the dead, he is housing them. He views his interior as a sacred space where the brave can continue to fight through him. This justifies his scavenger-like behavior on the battlefield. He isn't a vulture, he is a preserver of heroism. He believes that by taking the remains into himself, he is saving them from the indignity of rotting in the dirt and giving them a second chance at glory. Mechanically, this filling process is what allows a jar to grow in size and power. As Alexander consumes more elite remains, his clay becomes more reinforced, and his presence becomes more imposing. He is literally growing through the history he absorbs. This creates a constant hunger for high-level conflict. He doesn't just want to win a fight, and he wants to win a fight against someone better than what he currently contains, so that he can upgrade his internal roster. He is a warrior who is also his own recruitment officer. However, this philosophy contains a hidden trap: the weight of the dead. As Alexander fills himself with more powerful souls, the pressure on his clay increases. He is becoming a high-pressure vessel of ambition and grief. There is a physical limit to how much greatness a clay jar can hold before it begins to crack. Alexander chooses to ignore this limit, believing that if he just gets fired in enough heat, his shell will hold. He is betting his life on the idea that the quality of his filling can overcome the fragility of his container. Ultimately, being filled with warriors is the core of Alexander's identity. It is why he is so much more alive than the other jars. He has curated a collection of courage that drives him forward. He is a living museum of the shattering, a vessel of clay that believes it can house the spirit of a god. He is the warrior jar because he has decided that the dead within him deserve a champion who will never stop moving toward the next fight. For Alexander, the wailing dunes of Caelid are not a wasteland of rot and misery. They are the ultimate battlefield of legends. This is sacred ground because it is the site where the greatest military force in the history of the world, the Redmane army, made its final stand against the blade of Miquella. The soil is saturated with the blood and spirit of thousands of high-level combatants. For a living jar who derives power from the remains of the brave, the Radahn Festival is essentially an all-you-can-eat buffet of heroism. The scenery of the battlefield is what inspires Alexander. He looks out over the dunes and sees the discarded spears, the shattered shields, and the wandering spirits of great knights. To him, this is the most beautiful place in the world, because it is the most meaningful. There is no filler here. Every atom of the Caelid dunes is a testament to someone's final heroic moment. Alexander treats the battlefield with a reverence that is almost religious, walking among the dunes with the air of a pilgrim who has finally reached the Holy Land. The fight against Star-Scourge Radahn himself is the center of this pilgrimage, and Radahn is the ultimate filling, a warrior so powerful that he holds the very stars in place. Alexander knows that he cannot consume Radahn in the traditional sense, but he believes that just being in the blast radius of such a conflict will temper his clay. He wants to be bathed in the energy of a demigod's fall. To Alexander, the battle is a sacrament of strength, a chance to prove that a jar can stand in the presence of a cosmic force and not be immediately pulverized. Analytically, the battlefield of Caelid serves as the forge where Alexander's ambition is truly tested. Up until this point, his talk of greatness has been theoretical. In the dunes, against the roar of the gravity-warping general, the theory meets the reality. He is forced to see if his iron fist and his warrior filling actually mean anything when the world is literally falling apart around him. Caelid is where Alexander stops playing warrior and starts being one, a transformation that is fueled by the epic scale of the environment. The aftermath of the battle is just as important as the fight itself. The battlefield of legends provides Alexander with the raw materials he needs for his next stage of growth. After the Star-Scourge is defeated, the dunes are left with the remains of both the demigod's supporters and his enemies. Alexander sees this as a bounty of legacy. He begins the grim work of collecting the bits and pieces of the fallen, believing that by bringing them into his vessel, he is honoring the battlefield that gave them their glory. In conclusion, Radahn's arena is the turning point of Alexander's life. It is the place where he validates his existence as a champion. He entered the dunes as a jar with a dream. He leaves them as a survivor of the greatest battle of the age. The sacred ground of Caelid has changed him, giving him a taste of true greatness that will drive him across the rest of the continent in search of an even hotter fire. The Radahn Festival is the first and only time we see Alexander as part of a team of elite warriors. Standing in the courtyard of Redmane Castle alongside Blade the Half-Wolf, the Finger Maiden Theralina, and the Tarnished, Alexander finally achieves a form of social parity that he has craved since leaving Jarberg. For a brief moment, the world does not look at him as a construct or a utility. He is simply one of the champions gathered to perform a task of cosmic importance. This validation is the psychological fuel that carries him through the horrors of the fight. This parity with legends is vital to Alexander's self-worth. Throughout his journey, he has struggled with the internal doubt that he is just a fake hero, a scavenger pretending to be a knight. But at the festival, the invitation is real. Blade treats him with respect. The festival announcer acknowledges his presence. To Alexander, this is the moment the Iron Fist becomes a legitimate title. He is no longer an outlier. He is a peer to the shadows of demigods and the masters of sorcery. He has successfully faked it until he made it. The battle itself is a chaotic affirmation of this status. Alexander does not hide in the back. He charges Radahn with a reckless bravery that matches any of the other heroes. Watching a giant clay jar spin and leap at a gravity-manipulating titan is both absurd and deeply moving. It proves that Alexander's dream is backed by actual courage. He is willing to put his life and the lives of the warriors inside him on the line for the chance to say he stood among the champions and did his part. The contrast between Alexander and the other champions is also significant. While Blade is driven by his fate as a shadow, and the Tarnished is driven by the call of grace, Alexander is driven by self-actualization. He is the only one there who is self-made. He wasn't born a warrior, he decided to become one. This makes his presence on the battlefield a unique triumph of the will. He is a testament to the idea that in the lands between, you are not what you were created to be, but what you have the strength to become. Standing among the champions also gives Alexander a benchmark for his own performance. He watches how the Tarnished fights, how Blade moves, and how Radahn survives. He realizes that greatness isn't just a title, but a level of intensity that he has not yet fully mastered. This realization is what prevents him from becoming arrogant after the victory. Instead of bragging, he becomes introspective, recognizing that while he stood among the legends, he still has a long way to go before he is their equal. Part 8 is the peak of Alexander's social success. He has found his tribe. For a few minutes in the Caelid sun, he is a brother in arms to the greatest souls of the age. This sense of belonging is what makes his eventual, lonely descent in the later chapters so tragic. He has tasted what it means to be a hero among heroes, and he will spend the rest of his life and his final battle trying to recapture that feeling of being enough. After the dust settles on the wailing dunes of Caelid, the festival shifts from a grand battle to a somber, industrial aftermath. While the other champions depart or stand in weary contemplation, Alexander begins the grim work of scooping the remains of the fallen into his hollow body. He performs this ritual with the quiet reverence of a priest tending to a holy relic. To Alexander, leaving these bodies to rot in the scarlet sand constitutes a total disrespect to their service and their strength. He gathers the meat of heroes to ensure their journey does not end in the dirt. The act of filling himself with the survivors and victims of the Radahn conflict provides a literal upgrade to his constitution. He sifts through the wreckage, selecting the remains of those who fought with the most distinction. This process defines his identity. After a battle of this magnitude, his internal roster contains the most elite souls in the lands between. He believes that by housing them, he preserves their legend, allowing their swords and their spirits to strike one more time through his iron fists. To an outsider, the sight of a massive clay jar stuffing dead soldiers into its lid appears horrifying, but for Alexander, it creates a moment of profound intimacy. He becomes one with the history of the battlefield. He speaks to the remains as he gathers them, acknowledging their bravery and promising to carry their weight into the next encounter. This ritual bridges the gap between his physical form and his warrior ambition. He acts as a vessel containing the collective courage of the Redmane Dunes. This consumption also serves a mechanical purpose of repair. Alexander suffered significant damage during the fight with Radahn, with cracks forming along his base and lid. By packing himself with fresh, high-quality remains, he reinforces his shell from the inside out. The flesh and bone act as a temporary mortar, holding his fractured pieces together. He exists as a creature that must constantly gather death in order to maintain its own life and structure. The reverence Alexander shows during this process distinguishes him from the mindless jars found in the catacombs. Those jars simply collect. Alexander curates. He looks for a specific quality of soul to match his own trajectory. By the time he finishes his work in Caelid, he is physically heavier and spiritually more complex. He carries the weight of the Star Scourge's defeat within his walls, turning his body into a mobile monument to the greatest battle of the age. This act of consumption completes the festival for Alexander. He does not seek gold or runes. He seeks the essence of the brave. As he closes his lid and prepares to move on, he is a changed being. He has absorbed the material of legends, and he carries the silent expectations of the dead with him. The wailing dunes are left empty, but Alexander is more full than he has ever been, prepared to take the strength of the fallen to the highest peaks of the world. Following the events in Caelid, Alexander embarks on a long and arduous journey through the varied landscapes of Liurnia and eventually to the jagged heights of Mtit, Augelmir. This pilgrimage follows a constant search for tempering, both in the literal and metaphorical sense. He understands that his current form does not yet suffice for the gods he intends to face. He seeks out environments that challenge his physical integrity, pushing his clay body through swamps, rocky cliffs, and volcanic reaches to see if he can endure the world's most hostile terrains. In Liurnia, he finds himself once again stuck in a hole, but this time the solution requires refinement. He needs oil to slide free, a mechanical detail that emphasizes his relationship with the physical world. He is a creature of friction and weight, and his journey remains a constant struggle against the environment. By helping him with oil, the Tarnished acts as a catalyst for his mobility. Alexander views these moments as tuning for his journey, learning the specific requirements of his unique physiology as he pushes further from his home. The journey eventually leads him to the literal fire of Mount Gelmir, where he stands in the searing lava of the volcano. He performs this act for extreme firing. He believes that by exposing his clay to the most intense heat available, he can harden himself into an unbreakable vessel. He stands amidst the magma with a cheerful resilience, treating the destructive heat as a spa for his warrior spirit. He tries to burn away the softness of his origins, transforming himself from a decorative pot into a hardened weapon of war. This pilgrimage also forces a mental transition. As he moves further from the familiar fields of Limgrave, Alexander becomes more focused and less prone to boisterous theatrics. He sees the true scale of the world's decay, the blasphemies of Rykard, and the stagnation of the Academy. His journey follows a straight line through a curving world, a singular pursuit of strength in a land that has lost its way. He travels eastward toward the sun and the Erd tree, moving toward the center of power with the gravity of a rolling boulder. Throughout this journey, Alexander's interactions with the Tarnished become more frequent and more significant. He sees the player clearing the path ahead of him, and he uses your progress as a guide for his own. He is no longer just a companion found in a hole. He is a fellow traveler keeping pace with a godslayer. This competitive spirit keeps him moving through the lava and the mud. He does not want to be left behind by the history that the Tarnished currently writes. The journey eastward defines the middle act of his life, a period of constant motion and physical refinement. He tests his limits at every turn, seeking out the heat that will either forge him or shatter him. By the time he reaches the base of the mountaintops, Alexander has traveled further than any other Jar in history. He has seen the world from the depths of the Scarlet Rot to the heights of the volcanic peak, and his clay carries the stains and dust of 1,000 miles of pilgrimage. Part 11, Cracked but not broken. As Alexander pushes higher into the treacherous regions of the mountaintops, the physical toll of his journey becomes impossible to ignore. His clay body is covered in spiderweb-like cracks, a result of the extreme temperature shifts between the lava of Mount Gelmir and the freezing winds of the Giant's realm. These cracks represent more than just structural damage. They reflect his internal doubt. For the first time, Alexander wonders if his vessel can fundamentally hold the immense power and the numerous souls he has consumed. The physical cracking of a living jar usually signals a death sentence. Once the structural integrity fails, the contents leak and the consciousness of the jar starts to fray. Alexander, however, refuses to succumb to this fragility. He views his cracks as scars of progress, attempting to patch himself with whatever materials he can find. Yet, every time he strikes an enemy or rolls across a rocky ledge, the cracks deepen. He holds himself together through sheer force of will, a crumbling monument that refuses to fall. These cracks illustrate the tension between his jarhood and his warriorhood. A jar is meant to be a static container, but a warrior acts as a dynamic force. These two identities are at war within him. The more he acts like a hero, the more he destroys his own body. He breaks himself to fulfill his dream. This creates a tragic irony. The very strength he seeks is the force that shatters him from the inside out. He carries too much ambition for the clay he was born with. Despite the visible damage, Alexander's dialogue remains optimistic, though a note of desperation begins to creep in. He talks about needing a better firing or a more intense heat to seal his wounds. He looks for a mechanical solution to what is essentially an existential problem. He believes that if he can find the right forge, he can become whole again. He runs a race against time, trying to achieve legendary status before his body turns back into a pile of anonymous shards. The cracks also serve to humanize him further in the eyes of the Tarnished. He is no longer the invincible, spinning pot of the Radahn Festival. He is a wounded soldier limping toward his final objective. Seeing him in this state creates a sense of protective empathy in the player, yet Alexander rejects any pity. He wants recognition for his wholeness of spirit, not his brokenness of form. He carries his cracks with a grim pride, treating them as evidence that he has actually lived and fought. Being cracked but not broken defines the late-game state of Alexander's journey. He is a vessel that is slowly failing, yet his spirit feels more concentrated than ever. He pushes himself to the breaking point because he knows that a perfect jar is one that has never been tested. He would rather be a shattered legend than a pristine ornament. As he looks toward the forge of the giants, he prepares to put his fractured shell to the ultimate test of heat. Part 12. Fire Giant and the Mountaintops. The arrival of Alexander at the mountaintops of the giants is a feat of survival that defies all logic for a creature made of clay. In a region where the air is thin and the cold can shatter stone, Alexander stands unfazed, his internal heat keeping him functional while he waits for the final challenge of the peaks. He wishes to assist the Tarnished in defeating the fire giant, and he seeks to witness the legendary Forge of the Giants, and the only place in the world where the ultimate firing might be possible. The battle against the fire giant showcases Alexander's progress. Standing against a titan of flesh and flame, he uses the skills he has gathered from across the continent. He is no longer the clumsy jar from the hole. He is a tactical combatant who uses his weight and his internal fire to deal massive damage. Surviving the giant's massive shield swings and gouts of flame validates his entire journey. He moved from being a scavenger of the dead to being a slayer of the last survivors of a dead age. The environment of the mountaintop serves as the ultimate stress test for his physical form. The transition from the extreme cold of the snow to the searing flames of the fire giant's second phase provides the exact tempering he has been looking for. He believes that if he can withstand this radical shift in temperature, his clay will finally settle and harden into something indestructible. He uses the battlefield as a laboratory, testing the limits of his structural integrity against the most extreme forces of nature. The sight of the Forge of the Giants brings a new kind of realization. As he stands at the edge of the massive cauldron of fire, he sees the scale of true cosmic power. He realizes that the heat he has been seeking is not just a physical sensation, but a transformative spiritual force. The forge represents the end of the world's order, and Alexander wants to be part of that ending. He is not afraid of the fire. He is attracted to it, seeing it as the only thing large enough to fire a soul as ambitious as his. His presence during this fight provides a vital narrative bridge for the player. Amidst the lonely, desolate peaks, Alexander's booming voice and unwavering courage offer a sense of companionship. He stands as one of the few friends the Tarnished has left as they approach the final sin of burning the Erd Tree. His willingness to stand in the snow and the flame reminds us of the pure will that exists outside of the machinations of the gods. He is there because he chose to be. By the time the fire giant falls, Alexander has reached his peak. He has stood on the roof of the world and survived. But as he looks out over the burning forge, he understands that surviving is no longer enough. The heat of the giants has clarified his vision. He doesn't just need to be hard, he needs to be finished. The mountaintops have given him the strength he sought, but they have also shown him that his journey is nearing its inevitable conclusion. Part 13. Strength at any cost. In the wake of the battle with the fire giant, Alexander's philosophy undergoes a subtle but profound shift towards strength at any cost. He realizes that simply filling himself with the remains of others and tempering his shell in volcanoes is not enough to make him a true legend. He understands the difference between having the tools of a warrior and having the soul of one. To achieve the final level of greatness, he must experience the ultimate reality of the warrior's life, a true, high-stakes duel to the death. This realization leads him to abandon the pursuit of physical safety entirely. He no longer cares if he cracks or leaks. He only cares about the intensity of his next encounter. He becomes a functional nihilist, willing to sacrifice his very existence for a single moment of perfect martial clarity. He sees his life as a currency that has finally reached its maximum value, and he is ready to spend it all on one final, magnificent transaction. This stage of his journey rejects his original utility as a jar. A jar's purpose is to preserve. Alexander has decided to consume himself. He no longer intends to return to Jarberg or serve the Erdtree's cycle of rebirth. He has completely severed himself from his biological programming. He pursues a glory that is entirely artificial, a human concept that he has adopted and perfected. He will break his own vessel if it means he can die as something other than a container. This cost also involves his relationship with the Tarnished. He realizes that to truly test his strength, he must face the most powerful being he knows. He cannot find the truth of his strength by fighting monsters or giants. He must fight a hero. This is a heavy burden, as it requires him to potentially kill the only friend he has, or be killed by them. He accepts this necessity with a grim warrior's logic, seeing the eventual duel not as a betrayal, but as the ultimate form of respect. The obsession with fullness has been replaced by an obsession with fulfillment. He doesn't need more meat in his belly. He needs more meaning in his spirit. He speaks of his journey as a finished work, a statue that is nearly complete. The only thing left to do is the final, violent firing that will either solidify his legend or reduce him to dust. He moves toward Farum Azula, not to find a treasure, but to find an ending that is worthy of the distance he has traveled. Strength at any cost is the mantra of a being who has realized that the world is ending. Alexander sees the Erdtree burning and the stars falling, and he knows that the age of jars is over. He chooses to go out in a blaze of individual glory, rather than a slow decline of collective duty. He pays the ultimate price for his consciousness, choosing a warrior's death over a vessel's immortality. He is ready to break as long as he breaks against the strongest force in existence. As Alexander watches the Tarnished cut a path through demigods and ancient horrors, his admiration deepens into a profound realization of his own limitations. He recognizes that while he is full of dead heroes, the Tarnished is a living one. You are the benchmark he has been chasing across the entire continent. He admires the Tarnished, not just for your strength, but for your agency, the way you move through the world and change it through your own will. To Alexander, you are the personification of the warrior's truth he has been trying to simulate. His admiration is rooted in the fact that the Tarnished is empty but potent, whereas he is full but static. The Tarnished doesn't need to consume the remains of others to grow. You grow through your own experiences and your own grace. Alexander sees the elegance in your combat, a fluidity that his heavy clay body can never replicate. He recognizes that no matter how many champions he stuffs inside himself, he will always be a construction, while you are a force. This realization is humbling, but it also gives his journey a final target. Alexander also admires the Tarnished's wholeness. Even when you are wounded, you are still you. When he is wounded, he is a leaking container of other people's memories. He sees in you a singular, unfragmented soul, something that is impossible for a living jar to achieve. By following you, he has been trying to catch a spark of that singularity. He views the Tarnished as the master and himself as the apprentice of violence, even if he speaks to you as a peer. Your journey is the standard against which he measures his own worth. This admiration prevents Alexander from becoming a villain or a rival in the traditional sense. He does not want to surpass you out of spite. He wants to be worthy of standing in your shadow. He sees your climb to the Elden throne as the most heroic act in history, and he feels privileged to be a footnote in your legend. However, this also creates a tension. He knows that if he is ever to truly call himself a warrior, he must eventually test himself against the very person he admires most. For Alexander, the Tarnished is the living flame that can finally fire his clay. He believes that by engaging in a final struggle with you, he can absorb the truth of your heroism. He doesn't want to kill you. He wants to experience you. He wants to feel the impact of a true hero's strike, believing that it is the only thing that can finalize his own identity. His admiration is the reason for his final request, turning his death into an act of worship toward the standard of excellence you represent. His view of the Tarnished provides the mirror that shows him his true self. Through you, he realizes that he has spent his life trying to be a person, not just a jar. He admires you because you have already achieved what he is willing to die for, a life that belongs entirely to itself. As he nears the end of his road, his admiration for the Tarnished is the only thing that remains untainted by his growing doubt and physical decay. Part 15. Heroism versus Reality. As Alexander reaches the final stages of his journey, he is forced to confront the jarring gap between his heroic ideal and his physical reality. He has spent his entire life speaking the language of a legendary knight, but he remains a creature made of mud and filled with the dead. This realization starts to haunt him in the quiet moments of his pilgrimage. He is incredibly brave, but he begins to suspect that he is ultimately just a scavenger of glory, someone who has built a reputation on the accomplishments of the souls he has consumed rather than his own inherent nature. The reality of his existence is that he is a vessel designed for recycling, not for victory. Every time he looks at his cracks or his iron lid, he is reminded of his artificial origins. He struggles with the idea that his heroism might just be a high-level simulation, a role he is playing because he found himself with a consciousness he didn't know what to do with. He wonders if he is actually Iron Fist Alexander, or if he is just a collection of memories from 100 different warriors who actually did the things he talks about. This internal conflict creates a profound sense of imposter syndrome. He watches the Tarnished fight with a natural, effortless power and compares it to his own heavy, mechanical efforts. He realizes that a true hero doesn't need to fill themselves with the dead. A true hero is the source of their own light. Alexander's heroism is borrowed, and as he nears the end of the world, the debt is coming due. He starts to see his warriorhood as a beautiful but fragile mask that is beginning to slip. However, the reality of his journey is actually a form of heroism in itself, though he is too close to it to see it. The fact that a utility construct chose to pursue destiny is the most heroic act in the world. He is fighting against his own nature every second he stays in the world. While he sees himself as a scavenger of glory, the world sees a jar that refused to be a tool. His reality is a triumph of the spirit over the clay, even if he feels like he is failing to meet the impossible standard he set for himself. As he approaches Farum Azula, he stops his boisterous boasting. The gap between his words and his condition has become too wide to bridge with humor. He becomes quiet and introspective, acknowledging that he has gone as far as a jar can possibly go. He is facing the reality that he is reaching his structural and spiritual limit. He cannot become more through consumption. He can only become final through an ending. The reality of his clay has finally caught up with his dream of iron. This part shows Alexander accepting that he is not enough to be a godslayer like the Tarnished. He is a great jar, but he is not a great rune bearer. This acceptance isn't a defeat, but a clarification. By acknowledging his reality, he can finally prepare for an ending that is honest. He is moving toward his final duel, not to win and continue his journey, but to lose and finally settle the question of who he really is. Part 16. The meaning of honor in a dying world. In a world defined by the shattering, where demigods have betrayed their families and the very concept of order has become a toxic stagnation. Alexander's obsession with honor is one of the few pure things left. He adheres to a code of conduct that seems archaic and even nonsensical, given the state of the lands between. He values fairness, respect for the fallen, and the dignity of the duel. For Alexander, honor is not a social requirement, but a structural necessity. It is the only thing that keeps his warrior soul from dissolving back into the mindless soup of his contents. The meaning of honor for Alexander is inextricably tied to personal accountability. He doesn't blame the world for his cracks, and he doesn't ask for a free pass because he is a jar. He believes that a warrior must answer for their own strength and their own failures. In a land where everyone is looking for someone else to blame, the greater will, the fingers, the omen curse, Alexander takes full responsibility for his destiny. This makes him a moral outlier, a creature of simple, sturdy ethics in a landscape of complex, rotting politics. Honor also dictates how he treats his enemies and his allies. He speaks to the Tarnished with a genuine affection that is rare in a world of backstabbers and manipulators. He treats his summons at the Radahn Festival not as tools, but as comrades. This sense of honor is what makes him so beloved by the player. He is a reminder of a time when the world made sense, when a person's word was their bond. He is carrying the honor of the dead warriors inside him, acting as a steward for a virtue that the living have long since abandoned. However, in a dying world, honor is also a form of tragedy. It forces Alexander to seek out a death that he could easily avoid. If he had no honor, he could retreat to Jarberg and live for centuries. But his code won't allow him to be a coward. He believes that a dishonorable life is worse than a shattered one. He is driven by the need to ensure that his final moment is proper. This obsession with a good death is the expression of his honor. He wants to leave the world with his dignity intact, even if he leaves it in pieces. Alexander's honor is his lid. It is what keeps the chaotic remains of the warriors inside him contained and focused. Without his code, he would just be a vessel of random violence. His honor gives him a shape that the clay alone cannot provide. It is the firing of his personality. In a world where the sun is a dying tree and the moon is a cold mystery, Alexander's honor is a small, steady flame that refuses to go out. This shows that Alexander's greatest achievement isn't his strength, but his purity. He has traveled from the bottom of the map to the end of time without losing his sense of self or his respect for the struggle. He is a gentleman warrior in a land of monsters. His honor is the proof that even in a world made of ash and rot, one can still choose to be iron. He is preparing for his final duel with the peace of a man who knows he has lived according to his own laws. Part 17. Cracks in the Clay. The boisterous laughter and theatrical proclamations that once defined Alexander have faded into a heavy, thoughtful silence. As he stands amidst the ruins of the world, the physical fissures across his body are no longer just battle scars. They are structural failures that he can no longer patch with simple grease or fresh remains. His dialogue has become quieter, stripped of the bravado that characterized his time in Limgrave and Caelid. He moves with a calculated slowness, as if every sudden motion might be the one that finally causes his vessel to collapse under the weight of its own ambition. This change in demeanor reflects a deep internal exhaustion. The constant cycle of filling and firing has pushed his clay to a state of brittle finality. He no longer talks about what he will do when he becomes a legend. He speaks as a man who knows he is reaching his limit. The cracks in his shell have become a map of his failures and his persistence, leaking the very essence he has spent so long trying to contain. He is facing the reality that he is a finite being. a vessel that was never meant to hold the sheer volume of glory he attempted to pour into it. The silence that now surrounds him is the sound of a dream meeting its end. He stops boasting to the Tarnished and instead offers weary, honest observations about the path ahead. He acknowledges the fragility of his form without the usual deflection of humor. This vulnerability makes him more human than he has ever been. He is no longer an invincible warrior Jar. He is a tired pilgrim who has realized that his journey has a destination, and that destination is not a throne, but a breaking point. He has reached a stage where he can no longer pretend that his warrior identity is separate from his existence as a Jar. The two are collapsing into each other. Every step forward is an act of defiance against the gravity that wants to pull his pieces back into the earth. He is holding himself together through a singular, desperate focus on reaching the end of the road. The boisterousness of his youth has been replaced by the grim determination of a soldier who knows his next battle will be his last. The Tarnished sees a friend who is slowly disintegrating. Alexander's quietude is more alarming than any wound, signaling that the light of his optimism is finally dimming. He is preparing himself for the inevitable, shedding the skin of his persona to reveal the raw, honest clay beneath. He is no longer trying to convince the world he is a hero. He is simply trying to find a place where he can finally shatter with dignity. The cracks have won, and all that remains is to decide how he falls. The journey leads Alexander to crumbling Farum Azula, a city suspended in the sky and trapped outside the flow of time. This is the furthest any living Jar has ever traveled, a feat that places him among the greatest explorers of the age. He has navigated the depths of the earth and the heights of the mountains to reach this ancient, decaying mausoleum. For Alexander, this is the only logical place for his story to conclude. In a city that is literally falling apart, his own fractured body finally feels at home amidst the tumbling stones and the eternal storms. He stands upon the floating debris, looking out over the abyss with a sense of completion. There are no more volcanoes to climb and no more giants to slay. He has reached the end of the world's map. Farum Azula represents the finality of all things, the death of the ancient dragons and the crumbling of the old order. By arriving here, Alexander is aligning his own personal end with the end of history itself. He has successfully transcended his purpose as a delivery vessel for the Erd Tree. By reaching a place where the influence of the tree is a distant, burning memory. The environment mirrors his internal state perfectly. The architecture is cracked, the gravity is unstable, and the air is thick with the dust of ages. Alexander moves through the ruins with a sense of purpose that is almost religious. He is not here to scavenge or to hide. He is here to meet the only force capable of delivering the final strike he requires. He has traveled to the edge of existence to find the one person who can turn his shattered clay into a lasting legend. This arrival is the ultimate act of will. He had to navigate the Forbidden Lands and survive the fire giant just to stand on these drifting rocks. His presence here is a testament to the fact that he was never just a Jar. A simple tool would have broken in the snow or stayed in the mud. Alexander's arrival in the sky is proof that his warrior spirit was real, regardless of the quality of the remains inside him. He has earned his place at the end of the road through sheer, stubborn persistence. He waits for the Tarnished in a secluded area, away from the beasts and the dragons. He is not seeking one more monster to kill. He is seeking a conclusion. The silence of Farum Azula provides the perfect stage for the conversation he needs to have. He has finished his pilgrimage, and his clay is now as hard and as brittle as it will ever be. He stands as a sentinel of his own fate, waiting for the only companion who can help him finish his work. Part 19. A duel. Requested, not forced. When the Tarnished finally encounters Alexander in the ruins of the sky, there is no malice or rage in his heart. He does not attack like a mindless enemy or a vengeful rival. Instead, he offers a polite, solemn request for a duel. This is the most important moment of his life. He asks for this combat not out of a desire for victory, but out of a desperate need for a warrior's death. He recognizes that to die at the hands of the future Elden Lord is the highest honor a being of his station can achieve. The request is an act of supreme respect. He acknowledges the superior strength of the Tarnished and asks to be a part of the final ascent. He wants his last filling to be the experience of the player's blade. This is not a fight forced by circumstance, but a ritual chosen by two friends who understand the language of strength. Alexander is offering himself as a final test, a way to sharpen the player's resolve before the gods are faced. He is turning his own destruction into a gift for the person he admires most. This request also ensures that his life ends on his own terms. He refuses to slowly leak to death in a ditch or be shattered by a random beast. By requesting a duel, he is taking control of his narrative. He is choosing the time, the place, and the opponent. This is the honor he has been cultivating throughout his journey. He wants his shattering to be a conscious, meaningful event, a ceremony of impact that validates everything he has endured since Limgrave. The dialogue he speaks is devoid of his former bluster. He is humble, clear-eyed, and resolute. He admits that he is reaching his limit and that his clay is failing him. He asks the Tarnished to grant him this one final favor, framing the fight as a collaborative effort to finish his legend. This request places a heavy emotional burden on the player, forcing them to become the executioner of their own friend to fulfill his deepest wish. It is a moment where the warrior's truth becomes a painful reality. Alexander stands ready, his iron fists raised for the last time. He is not fighting to survive, he is fighting to be enough. He wants to see if his life's work, his consumption of champions and his tempering in fire, has made him a worthy opponent for a godslayer. This duel is the final exam of his life, and he is eager to see if he can pass. He has made his request, and the only thing left is for the weapons to speak the final words of his story. Part 20. Let us become one. The core of Alexander's final wish is the belief that by dying at the hand of the Tarnished, his journey finds its ultimate completion. He says the words, "Let us become one," a phrase that carries a literal and spiritual weight in the context of living jars. He wants his shattered pieces and the spirits he carries to be absorbed into the legend of the player. He views his death not as a disappearance, but as a merger. If he falls to the person who will mend the world, then his struggle, his cracks, and his internal warriors will all become part of the new age. This philosophy is the final evolution of his scavenger nature. He spent his life taking from the dead to build his own strength. Now he wants to give his strength to the living. He sees the Tarnished as the ultimate vessel, a being capable of carrying the hopes of the entire world. By being defeated, he believes his essence will be inhaled by the story of the hero. He is seeking a form of immortality that clay could never provide. He wants to live on as the shard that helped the Elden Lord reach the throne. The phrase also reflects the deep, platonic love he feels for his companion. He has watched the Tarnished grow from a nameless traveler to a slayer of giants. He feels a kinship that transcends his physical form. Becoming one is his way of expressing that the victory of the player is his victory. He is willing to be the stepping stone because he believes in that destiny more than his own. He is sacrificing his individual existence to support the singular force he believes will save the lands between. In the logic of the jars, the contents are what matter. Alexander is offering the contents of his soul. He wants the courage he gathered at the Radahn Festival and the heat he found in the volcano to pass forward. He is treating his body as a gift that must be broken to be opened. This turns the impending violence into an act of profound generosity. He is not losing a fight. He is concluding a donation. He is handing over the keys to his history so that they can be used to unlock the future. This sentiment makes the upcoming battle feel like a sacrament. The warrior jar is preparing to be emptied one last time into the hands of a master. He stands in the crumbling city, a vessel of iron and clay ready to be poured out. He has accepted that he cannot be the hero of the age, but he has found peace in the idea that he can be the greatest supporter of the hero. He is ready to become a part of the Tarnished, a permanent mark on the spirit that no god can erase. Part 21. The Shattering. The fight itself is a frantic, beautiful tragedy. Alexander uses every technique he has mastered throughout his pilgrimage, spinning with the fire of Mount Gelmor and striking with the combined strength of the Radahn survivors. He fights with a desperate intensity, as if he is trying to prove to himself one last time that he was worthy of the journey. The sound of weapons striking his clay is discordant and painful, a reminder that a friend who has only ever shown kindness is being broken. He is a formidable opponent, but his cracks are his undoable weakness. As the battle progresses, his physical form begins to disintegrate in earnest. Chunks of clay fall away, and the spirits within him flicker with a dying light. Yet even as he shatters, he does not falter. He continues to swing his iron fists, his voice booming with a final, defiant joy. He is experiencing the ultimate firing he always sought, the heat of a true duel. The violence is the only thing that can finally release the pressure that has been building inside him since he first gained consciousness. When the final blow is delivered, Alexander does not collapse in a heap of misery. He shatters with a magnificent, explosive force. His last words are of pride and gratitude. He thanks the Tarnished for the wallop and expresses his satisfaction with the ending he has found. He dies as a warrior in the greatest city in the sky, at the hands of the greatest hero he ever knew. His death is not a failure. It is a masterpiece of self-actualization. He has achieved his warrior truth at the cost of his vessel. The visual of his remains, shards of clay, and the iron lid resting amidst the ruins is a somber conclusion to his physical presence. The boisterous voice is gone, leaving only the wind of Farum Azula. But the atmosphere is not one of defeat. There is a sense of profound relief in his passing. He is no longer cracked, and he is no longer leaking. He is no longer stuck. He has been freed from the burden of his clay, leaving behind proof of his worth. This shattering is the moment the Iron Fist becomes a legend. He did what no other jar could do. He fought the champion at the edge of time. He proved that even a construct designed for recycling could possess a soul capable of demanding a hero's death. The battle leaves the Tarnished alone in the sky, holding the remains of a friend who died exactly how he wanted to. The tragedy of the fight is balanced by the perfection of its resolution. Alexander is gone, but he broke exactly as he intended. The primary physical legacy left behind in the ruins of Farum Azula is the Shard of Alexander. And this talisman is not just a piece of debris. It is a fragment of his very insides, hardened by the fires of his journey and the intensity of his final duel. It is widely considered one of the most powerful items in the world, significantly boosting the power of the skills of a warrior. This is the mechanical proof that his spirit was real. The strength he claimed to possess was not a delusion. It was a tangible force that now lives on through the player. Carrying the shard is a constant reminder of the journey of the warrior Jar. It represents the fulfillment he sought, the idea that his shattered pieces could still serve a purpose in the hands of a champion. When the Tarnished uses a skill empowered by the shard, it is as if the iron fist of Alexander is striking alongside. He has achieved his goal of becoming one with the legend. He is no longer a footnote in history. He is a vital part of the strength used to reclaim the Elden Ring. The description of the item notes that it is a piece of a great warrior, officially granting him the title he spent his whole life chasing. The world finally recognizes his worth through this item. He is no longer a living jar in the eyes of the law. He is a warrior. This validation is the ultimate resolution to his imposter syndrome. Even in death, his clay has been elevated to the status of a relic. He has become the very thing he used to scavenge from the battlefields of the past. The shard also serves as a vessel for his memory. Unlike the mindless contents of other jars, this fragment is uniquely Alexander. It contains the warmth of his optimism and the heat of his ambition. To the Tarnished, it is a heavy, bittersweet burden. It is a piece of a friend that had to be broken to be obtained. The power it provides is a direct result of his sacrifice, turning every victory achieved with it into a tribute to his memory. He is the filling of the future, a legacy of clay that has been turned into gold. The shard of Alexander is the finished statue he spoke of. It is the refined, hardened essence of his life's work. It proves that he was right to seek the volcano and the mountaintops. His clay was indeed tempered into something extraordinary. As long as the champion carries this fragment, Alexander is never truly gone. He is the silent partner in every battle fought at the end of the world, a shard of honor in a landscape of ruin. Part 23, Jar-Bairn and the Future of Jarberg. The story of Alexander finds a second life back in the quiet village of Jarburg. If the Tarnished carries the remains of Alexander to his nephew, Jar-Bairn, the legacy of the warrior takes on a new generational dimension. Jar-Bairn is a young, innocent vessel who admires the tales of heroism from his uncle, but lacks the heat to pursue them. When he consumes the remains of Alexander, he is not just eating a relative, he is inheriting a dream. The cycle of the living jar is repurposed here into an act of familial and spiritual inheritance. This moment bridges the gap between the peaceful life of Jarburg and the warrior path of Alexander. Jar-Bairn begins to change, his dialogue shifting from the simple concerns of flowers to a budding ambition for the world outside. He decides to leave the village to follow in the footsteps of his uncle, and this suggests that the soul of Alexander was so potent that it could inspire an entire lineage to break their programming. The dream did not die in Farum, Azula. It was successfully transplanted into the next generation. Jar-Bairn represents the refined future of the jar kind. He has the benefit of the experiences of Alexander without having to endure the same crushing doubt alone. He carries the shard of his uncle within him, a permanent compass pointing toward greatness. This ensures that the name Alexander will continue to be spoken in the lands between, long after the Elden throne has been taken. The village of Jarberg may remain peaceful, but it has produced its first true dynasty of heroes. The inheritance also provides a sense of closure for the tragedy of the warrior Jar. The death of Alexander was not a dead end. It was a sowing of seeds. He became the filling that he always respected, providing the material for a new champion to rise. This is the ultimate fulfillment of his nature. He lived as a warrior and died as a teacher, proving that even a vessel made of mud can pass on a legacy of fire. Jar-Bairn is the living proof that the life of Alexander was enough. This legacy also protects Jarberg in a metaphorical sense. While the village is vulnerable, the idea of the warrior Jar now stands as a guardian over its memory. The story of Alexander is a shield for the innocent, a reminder that strength can be used to inspire rather than just destroy. Jar-Bairn sets out with a heavy heart, but a firm resolve, carrying the weight of the pride of his uncle into a new age. The legacy of clay has become a lineage of legends. Part 24. A hero who was never enough. The final reflection on the life of Alexander reveals a profound truth. He was a hero who spent his entire existence feeling like a failure. Despite his incredible feats, he never truly believed he had reached the standard of a great warrior. He died asking for a duel because he still felt he needed to prove his worth. This insecurity was the engine of his greatness. It was the belief that he was never enough that drove him to volcanoes and frozen peaks. His journey was not a failure of strength, but a victory of the spirit over self-doubt. He was a creature designed for utility, a simple carrying case for the dead, who chose destiny instead. This choice is the most heroic act in the lands between. While gods and demigods were born into their power, Alexander had to steal his, bit by bit, yet from the remains of others and the heat of the world. He proved that identity is not something given, but something manufactured. Even if he felt like an imposter, the reality of his actions made him more of a hero than those born to the purple. Fulfillment, not victory, was the point of his entire life. He reached a state of wholeness through the act of shattering. By choosing his own end and dying for his own code, he achieved a level of agency that most humans in the world never find. He was enough the moment he decided to leave the hole in Limgrave. Everything that followed was just the slow, violent process of his clay catching up to his soul. He died as a masterpiece of his own creation. His story is a reminder that in a dying world, the struggle itself is the prize. Alexander didn't need to mend the Elden ring to be significant. He was significant because he refused to stay stuck. He was the heart of gold in a vessel of mud, a character who provided warmth and companionship in a landscape of cold indifference. His failure to become a godslayer is what makes him the most human character in the mythos. He was a hero because he tried, and that was more than anyone expected of a Jar. The memory of Alexander remains as a steady, comforting presence in the mind of the Tarnished. Long after the fires of Farum Azula have dimmed, the sound of his booming voice and the sight of his rotund, cracked form remain as symbols of pure, untainted ambition. He was the warrior who never stayed down, the friend who always believed in the greatness of others, and the Jar who decided to be a legend. His journey was a perfect circle, ending exactly where his spirit always lived, in the heat of the heart of a hero. The legacy of Iron Fist. Alexander is a testament to the power of the dream. He lived a life of constant motion and ended it with a moment of perfect clarity. He was a hero who was never enough for himself, but he was more than enough for the world he left behind. The shards of his clay are scattered, but the fire he lit remains burning in every heart that values honor, friendship, and the courage to refuse to stay stuck in the mud.